Freud got mixed in my head with my father.
No. Now this is new.
I just gave a little talk about what.
Right. Hey, Dr. Sandler, we are back. We've got 6 episodes.
Right.
Right on, yeah.
Right.
So we are doing some good work.
I hope so.
Yeah, we're getting good feedback. I think we're getting good feedback.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Some people have disagreements, about what we talked about, but that's fine. That's natural, and we want more agreements and disagreements to come. People can welcome to post because people are welcome.
Yeah, right. Any feedback is welcome.
That's great. Yeah.
Sure.
So just to sum it up, we have done. You just introduced about what you do. You do dynamic therapy, and one of the startling things about you is that you cure patients. Which very few people say that. And you are
either that or I'm quite delusional, but I think I'm curious.
Well, you've been saying that for a long time, so I know that it was not like a flash in the pan or something.
Yeah.
So we talked about that the most important thing that you are addressing is the unconscious.
Right.
The most important is the emotions, and we talked about how the defense mechanisms get in your way.
Yes.
And that is what, broadly, and it describes the work that we did, and hope people understood. We had that tape, wonderful actress.
Yeah, we showed the Carla case. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think about how you've done?
I think bringing in the Carla case was a good thing to show people what it really looks like, because you can lecture about psychotherapy, you can write books on psychotherapy, but if especially when people are in training, if they see a case, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And then for the general viewer to actually see somebody in the act of dealing with psychotherapy, it makes a difference. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Good.
So today I just wanted to just talk about another aspect of this tea with Freud.
Yeah.
Is we talked about the actual work you do in the office. We got an actress to show that. But one thing that is very striking about this book is the way the format of the book. That there is one chapter Freud and one chapter the case, one chapter, and that you are talking to Freud.
Yeah.
So why did you choose to do it that way? It's a unique way.
Yeah. And you were in on the ground floor because I wrote up the first chapter and brought it to you for your thoughts and advice.
Yeah.
So you were there at the beginning. But I wrote my first book, Remembering with Emotion, back in 2011, and that was for therapists to, so I could say, this is how I do it.
Right.
Step by step, here's some of the big ideas that I've learned and tried to improve upon. So that came out. And then over the next couple of years, I thought it would be really interesting, to write a book for the general public and say, this is what dynamic psychotherapy looks like. Dynamic, again, being all the offshoots of Freud's early work and sifting out his best ideas. My wife had a role in the genesis of this book, because I was all excited.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah. I was all excited. Well, we've talked about our wives and families as well as psychotherapy. I was all excited on a Saturday morning, and I said, I got this great idea. I'm going to write a book for the general public explaining the kind of therapy I do. And she, being very plain spoken and honest, looked at me and said, who in the world do you think is going to read that? So I went up to my study. I was horribly depressed, and I thought, she has a point. It could be deadly boring.
We should do a series for wives in communication style.
Stay tuned. So anyway, I went to my study and I was feeling miserable because I really wanted to do it. And I sat there that afternoon thinking there must be a way I could make this interesting. The ideas are interesting, but interesting to the general educated reading public. And then I hit upon the idea of a conversation with Freud, and I started writing. I'm out in Vienna, like sort of a time travel fantasy that I'm at his office in Vienna. It's early 20th century, and he and I are going to sit and have a cup of tea, and we're going to talk. And then the second chapter, I put in a case of Carla, and then the third chapter, I went back to Freud, and alternating back and forth. And of course, as you recall, I showed you the first chapter. You had some advice and a lot of encouragement.
Yeah.
So I that's how I did it, and that was the underlying motive. I wanted it to be entertaining as well as informative.
Yeah. Now, in the first chapter, what was striking me, partly I understand and partly I don't understand, still maybe, is that you showed Freud a little distant, a little unwelcoming, little unaccepting. And I was wondering, was there a point, or was it just a literary tool, just to make it interesting?
No, that was based on my readings about Freud. I reread a lot of Freud's work in order to be clear on what he was saying and try to get it right. And I also read some biographies of Freud, and it's pretty clear he could be a difficult guy. Right? He could be very encouraging, very supportive and accepting, or quite the opposite. He could be quite threatened by somebody like Jung, who came up with different ideas. Cut him off, just cut him off. And over the course of his life, he would have these intense friendships and then basically blow them up. And he commented on it in one of his early writings. He said, I seem to have this tendency to have a deep friendship, but then I throw some kind of monkey wrench into it. So I wanted to put that in the book as well. And that's why from the very beginning there was a little tension between Freud and myself. Get inside Freud's mind and imagine how he would be working, how he would be thinking. Like, hey, I've worked my whole life to get these ideas together, and how dare you tell me that this is not what's happening in your neck of the woods. And then I wanted to check myself, of course, so I made contact with a psychoanalyst in Western Massachusetts who teaches Freud and really has immersed herself in Freud. And I asked her to review the manuscript for me and answer two questions. Number one, am I presenting Freud's ideas accurately? And she said, yeah, that sounds correct. Number two, am I presenting Freud the man as best you have seen him from his autobiography, from his biographies, because obviously neither one of us met him. And number three, was I alienating or insulting any of the analysts who are doing more on the couch, because that's not what I do. And so she took a look at it and seemed content with what was in there.
That's good. So it's accurate, reasonably accurate as far as you can tell,
As far as people in the 21st century, no.
So, not only people who are interested in learning about psychotherapy, just out of curiosity, or who want to do or who want to perfect their skills, but also people who are Freud fans, or just interested in Freud himself. This would be a good way to understand him. Because biographies are biographies, right? Someone else is writing about someone else, and this is like a fictional character. So you can get to see their inner working, about their expressions, and that in a real dialogue with someone.
It was. I have to say, it was fun to write. It was really fun to write, and of course, as part of the writing, I had to go see where Freud lived and worked. So there's a Freud museum in Vienna where he had his old office. And it was nice fascinating actually to stand in the space where he saw patients, and then in the adjoining room where he sat up till 1 and 2 in the morning writing his books. But the furnishings were mostly moved out when he fled the Nazis in 1938, and he moved everything to London. There's another Freud museum in London where he lived the last year of his life. And I went there to see the couch and his original books, and I had to put in some effort to this. But that really helped me get the feel of what his surroundings were like and what his couch looked like, and so that was fun. It was really fun.
So that makes me think that apart from psychotherapy, you are an admirer of Freud as a person too. Or curious about him, right? To make all that effort and to write a book.
Certainly curious. I have a mix of admiration and other feelings.
Mixed feelings.
Because, as I say, he wasn't always so nice to his, what he saw as competitors. But sounds like a man who is just passionately committed to understanding how human beings work. And what I tried to get through in the book is not just, this is what Sigmund Freud was like as a person, but these are some of his timeless ideas, like defense mechanisms and transference, that the patient transfers feelings onto the therapist based on old relationships. I think these are just timeless, brilliant insights, and I want them to be freely available to people.
Yeah, yeah. So that's great. So it is so people can learn about him, and this is like a tribute to him too.
Absolutely,
Right? That
absolutely.
You want to, that this is
Absolutely.
and remind people that this is a great guy, and he made a great contribution.
Yeah.
And just don't dismiss him because he wrote about Oedipal complex and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's been thrown out because of some of his less popular ideas, and sometimes in this country, in this culture, everything old is junk. It's thrown out like there's no value for the timeless ideas that people come up with.
Yeah, good. And also I noticed, I think it was the first chapter in which or first or the third chapter in which you were saying that when you were talking about Darwin, who was another influence on your style, right?
Yeah.
That is, he was the one who started this short-term dynamic model.
He was one of the pioneers in the
for that.
60s.
And you mentioned that, and you said that you were having a discussion with Freud about it, that and you were hoping inside that he doesn't think that you think that Darwin was better than him.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And that's what you want to contribute to, because the style you do can be said, well, this is Darwin-Lewis style, but you want to make sure that people see.
I want to credit Freud.
This is Freud's all ideas, and this was just a touch of.
Yeah, I learned some things from Darwin, but I want people to credit the original ideas. The only other thing that I would mention, of course, is that Freud got mixed in my head with my father.
No. Now this is new. This is a revelation, self-revelation.
My father wasn't always the most amiable person either, and so I started to have thoughts about him as I was writing the book. And then I originally would edit them out and think, I don't want this to be autobiographical, but they kept coming in, and I said, well, I guess they want to stay, so let them stay. And I realized at the time my dad was 97, 98, and he was approaching the end of his very long life. And so I mingled my thoughts with this fictitious Freud with my thoughts about my father, who could be very supportive and then very critical, just like Freud.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a self-analysis for me too.
I think it's good for me to know and for the readers to know. It's interesting, and that was the thing. And also, from a theoretical viewpoint, that if in the context of psychodynamic psychotherapy, that your relationship with parents is so important and you cannot escape it.
Right.
So even when you are writing a book, you cannot escape it. And so for everyone, your parents are within you, or you're struggling with them in some way or the other.
It's a standard joke to the therapists say, "Tell me about your mother," but those early experiences are so formative.
Yeah. So so good. It was nice to know about that, and and we have to really figure out that what should be our next steps. What are any thoughts?
Emotion theory. One of the things I discovered in my own career is a whole body of work called emotion theory, which was not covered in my residency. I wasn't taught anything about it, but just it set me on a path to answer the question, what is emotion and what's the purpose of emotion? When somebody says, oh, you should get in touch with your feelings, well, why?
Well, maybe that's what we'll talk about next time.
Maybe we should.
Yeah? All right, very good. So I'll see you in the next episode, and keep watching. There's lots more to come.
Next time.